Hey, so we have Tom Foley here. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Tom is the manager of global sales and customer support enablement at Intercom. He's been there for almost, actually over 4 years. He's based out of Dublin, travels out here to San Francisco pretty often. And for those of you who don't know much about Intercom, one of my favorite products that we use here at WorkRamp, they've raised over $240 million. They reached unicorn status back in 2018 when they raised their last round from Kleiner, and they're a little over 800 people. So they're really dominating the space they're in, and we're really excited to have Tom here today to join us. So Tom, thanks for being here.
No worries, excited to be here, thank you.
Cool. So before we jump in, why don't you give us a little background about yourself and how you made it into the world of enablement?
Yeah, sure. So as you said there, I'm based in Ireland. So I actually studied law in college here, which is kind of worlds away from Intercom, it feels like. So I studied law and I did that for about a year and a half after college. I worked in a law firm in Chicago, and I worked in the federal courts in LA, and I worked with a law firm in Luxembourg. And the motivation for doing law was always like to help people. And I always wanted to work with people, but it kind of wasn't really doing it for me. I got kind of frustrated I wasn't able to like see things through to the conclusion. Because you'd be working with a company, you get to do cool stuff, but then they'd go and execute upon it. So then I started working with a tech company in Ireland, a smaller one. And then it was like a 30-year-old company, and I was kind of doing enablement in there, and it was called like, I don't know what my title was, but it was like business associate or something like that. And then I went out to San Francisco on a work trip, and I was like, whoa, this is where I need to be. So then I stumbled across Intercom, and I started working here as an SDR. So I was one of the first hires here on the Dublin sales team. So we're part of the team that established the sales team here in EMEA. So that meant that we just did a load of building. We just did so much stuff from scratch, like setting up our ROE and how we work with other teams, what was our style for working, how we hired people. So during all that, I was helping to build like the foundations and the kind of principles around all that, and I was documenting it. So I started doing enablement again without really realizing it. And then I just started to do more and more of that. And I was enjoying that work a lot more than working with customers, because again, I was able to own things and see them through end to end. So then about a year and a half after doing the SDR role, I moved into the enablement role. I was kind of doing that solo for a while. And then around a year and a half or so ago, I then got promoted into the manager role, and we hired more people. So now we have a team of 3 enablement associates, myself and my director, Rich Wing. So that's kind of what got me here today.
That's awesome. That's a great journey here. Rarely do you hear going from law into the enablement world. So it's really unique to have that perspective that you have. So, well, let me start you with this too. In your last couple of years of enablement, how would you generally describe your philosophy that you've built around enablement itself?
Yeah. So our philosophy is always like, we have this North Star of like helping reps to be outstanding at their role. That's always the thing we try to keep in the back of our mind when we're working and when we're planning and whatnot. But that has changed a lot. In any one moment, that means very different things. So what I'm trying to get at there is that Intercom is like a rapidly scaling company, and there's just an awful lot of needs in the moment that you need to kind of react to, whether it's that you're rolling out a new product, or you're breaking into a new segment, or there's a company initiative to move in a certain direction. And so you need to help reps be outstanding in that moment. But you also, when you're thinking about helping them to be outstanding, you need to be future-proofing as well. And then what that means is like building their skills, preparing them for like moving up market. So we've constantly kind of been towing the line between those things of whether we're responding to something that's happening in the moment. So we want to get them really good on this new product, or we want to help them to be able to speak to a certain customer in a certain way, or react to a certain competitor. At the beginning of the enablement journey, that was the most of our work we were doing around that, was reacting to those things that were just happening because it was crazy. We were hiring like crazy. We were building onboarding. And now we're kind of moving into that position where things have slowed down a little bit, and we have a bigger team. So we're helping people to be a bit more proactive about their learning and their journey around that. So that's kind of been our philosophy to date. Like I said, it's varied from time to time as to what we're focusing on based on the business needs, but we've always been trying to strike that tension between reacting to that stuff, but also preparing for the future.
That's a great answer. I love how you have the philosophy of, hey, let's make reps outstanding, right? And I see that with a lot of other customers as being outstanding in the moment and outstanding for the long term. So let me ask you this, in terms of measuring how you're helping reps be outstanding, is it more of like an anecdotal measurement? Do you actually have hard metrics? Maybe walk us through how you show, hey, the programs that I'm running are being successful.
Yeah, so measurement is an interesting one. So for the longest time, we didn't have the time or the space to even think about measurement. Generally speaking, when it comes to enablement, like we were back to back on projects, and it was like literally, let's get this thing up and running, and let's hit the next thing. It was like a conveyor belt of stuff. So we didn't even have the time to think about measurement because we were just so busy. Then when it came to a stage where we were able to think about measurement, we had no way of measuring anything. Like we didn't have, like, we maybe weren't set up in Salesforce properly, so we couldn't run the right reports, or Tableau, we didn't have reports set up, and we didn't have the resources to do them. So when we kind of had the energy around measurement, we weren't able to do it. So we're in a position now where we're starting to think about measurement because, you know, it helps people sleep better at night when they can see the impact of the work they're doing. We haven't kind of found like our kind of secret sauce there of what the things we want to measure. At the moment, it's still fairly anecdotal. Like the way we kind of think about it is that the ultimate, like when we're successful, when the people keep coming back to us for more, when there's bums in seats, when people are asking for more, when we can see our content being used, when our stakeholders are happy, that's when we know we're doing the right thing. And that's what we're focusing on the moment is, are people showing up for trainings? Are they using our guru content? Are they hitting 100% in their work ramp modules? Are their managers coming to us with more ideas? And are they asking us for more questions and are demanding more? That's what we're currently using at the moment for measuring how successful we are. In the medium term, though, we are looking at like just the fairly basic stuff around, like, you know, time to close and onboarding. When we roll out a work ramp module around a certain product, are we seeing like an increase in number of calls there? Are we seeing an increase in revenue? So it is something that is a priority, but it's not like a P0 at the moment for us.
Yeah, and that's so common that we see across the board is make sure you have that really solid foundation, especially as you're going through rapid scale, and then layer on that level of measurement. So that's a great explanation there. So let me switch gears a little bit. So I love the Intercom product. And one really interesting thing about Intercom is that you guys have so many different use cases of your product, whereas many other companies might just have one or two use cases. Tell us the secret of enabling this large sales and CS team on multiple different use cases of the product itself. Like, what's the secret sauce there?
Ooh, I don't know if I know the secret sauce. I don't know if I can confidently say we have it cracked yet. But yeah, Intercom is a really wide product. There's a ton of things you can do with it. So initially we tried to hone in on like the persona route. We tried to hone in on a handful of personas, specifically around the sales side. But we found that with any one persona, there was just so many variances. Because again, you can just do so much with us that, like, even for support or marketing, there's just so many things that you can do. So then we reverted back to kind of the use case way of thinking about it again. So there's a couple of small things that we did. We rolled out our narrative and our pitch deck this year for the first time. Excuse me. So we rolled that out in February. And that was the first time that everyone had a unified way of talking about what Intercom was, how it worked, and the value that it delivered. So that's been a real, initially it was a real good conversation starter because different people had different interpretations. And once we kind of trashed that out amongst ourselves, we came to this unified way of talking about it. And we've seen like everyone now uses that. We listen to it back on calls. So now for once we're talking about it in the same way. And just today, actually, we're working on our V2 of that. So we're working the next iteration of that. And we're already seeing like a lot of engagement across our marketing partners and everyone. So building the narrative, building a unified talk track is brilliant. That's the one thing that we did. The second thing, we focus heavily on it in onboarding. So when you're a new hire and you're coming through, we obviously use WorkRamp pretty heavily for our onboarding. You're going to start learning about our use cases, and that's going to be the basis for everything that you're doing. And we do a lot of challenges in your first few weeks to make sure that you understand the basics of them, because again, everything kind of rolls down from that after the fact. So you'll do some challenges in your first and second and third week to make sure you can understand that and speak to them. And then finally, the next thing that we do is we try to bring everything that we do back to use cases as much as possible. So initially we just roll out a new feature and be like, yo, we have this new thing and it can do Y. Like, did you know that like you can now customize your messenger to look like this? So, and we kind of did a hit and run situation with those. We've just, here's a new thing, here's a new thing, here's a new thing. But now what we do is we just talk about the overall use case and how the use case has improved, and then the feature is going to be secondary to that. So for example, when we rolled out like our Articles Pro product this year, we didn't really talk about Articles Pro internally. We talked about our support solution and now how people can do more self-serve activities, and how we reduce costs, the cost of staffing support organizations then. So like I say, we kind of lead with the use case now, and everything else rolls in underneath that, rather than doing it the other way around, talking about the item first and then the use case. Again, like I said, Intercom is super wide. It's an ongoing challenge. The more we launch and the more people we sell to, it's growing and iterating. So we're by no means have the secret sauce cracked yet, but definitely finding our common narrative, focusing on onboarding and relating everything back to it has helped an awful lot.
That's awesome. And I love how you focus on the use cases first and foremost, but let's dig into that a little bit, especially on the product side. And we have a lot of customers who ask us, hey, how do we keep people up to date on the small product feature changes? Because they're happening so rapidly, especially with Intercom. You guys are rolling out features almost on a weekly basis, it seems like. So if you peel that back a little bit, just on the product side, and I would imagine enabling CS and support people really well on it, how do you actually enable the broader teams on the small and minor product changes on a frequent basis, and even the major product changes, to make sure they're up to date on the latest from a product perspective?
Yeah, so there's two aspects to that. So like you alluded to there, we focus on customer support enablement and sales enablement. So on the customer support side, they are quite focused on, we need to ship information as quickly as possible to them and as succinctly as possible. And make it very clear the customer impact it's going to have, whether it be positive or negative. And what we mean by negative is, do we expect a lot of responses to this? Like, will people understand it? Will they be happy about it? Might they be angry about it? So that's how we arm the customer support side, is give them as much information as possible, give them near uptime updates, and help them to prepare for what may be coming down the line with as many resources as we can, whether it be saved replies or like troubleshooting docs or whatever we can. So that's on the customer support side, is try and front load as much information as we can. On the sales side, we used to do something fairly similar, in that we were constantly sharing updates on all the things we were shipping. And what we found then is that our reps were far too feature focused. They were feature selling an awful lot, and they were in demos and they were showing how exactly how you could change this one thing. So what we've done then is we've slowed that down an awful lot. We've slowed down the amount that when we share information with them. And again, we kind of do it in the use case way. So we send out a bi-weekly email, for example, and again, we'll try and focus on how the use case has improved there, what you can now do versus what this new feature does. So again, we'll try and tie it back into the roadmap as to where this is going long term. Like, we're trying to build a tool that can do X, Y, Z in the future. And this new feature, it takes us one step forward. Or we will just talk about like, hey, this will save you X amount of time or whatever. So we've tried to slow that down. We've also tried to sequence the amount of information that goes out. So for example, our outbound reps, they don't need to know as much about the features we're shipping, because again, they're fairly high level. They're pitching like the value of Intercom. Our RMs, our account managers, they do need to know this stuff a lot more. So we'll try and give them more feature heavy information, being like, your customers may benefit from this. Whereas our AEs, again, they kind of sit in the middle, where they just kind of need to be able to speak to the benefits as well. So we've tried to make sure that these people are getting the right information. And to be successful here, maybe we're at a luxury we can do this, but we have a near dedicated head towards product enablement at the moment. And that person's gone super deep. They've been embedded with our product team here in Dublin, and they work with our sales and customer support team on the other side. So they're constantly feeding information back and forth, trying to figure out how to properly get it out there, and trying to gather information on the other side. And that's been a real game changer as well, because they've helped product to understand the customer impacts and the customer opportunities. And without that, we really would have struggled to get to where we are today, I think.
That's great. I think more organizations can learn from that, as having someone dedicated to product enablement, because it's hard as a sales enablement professional to be able to keep up with the product updates, especially when you're doing things like use case training, value selling, and trying to do products. I love how you've broken that up. So that's probably the key to your success so far. But let's switch gears a little bit. You talked about customer support there. So customer support in general has not had as in the customers that we've seen, hasn't had as much support on the enablement side as you would see on sales. So give us kind of the best practices you have around enabling customer support teams.
Yeah, the CS audience and the sales audience are wildly different. It's really fun to get to work with both. The CS team, they're hungry for information. They know what to do when they get it, and you can kind of see the impact of it straight away. Whereas in the sales audience, they can be a little bit more reluctant to engage sometimes, and can be harder to encourage sometimes. But the CS audience, like I alluded to there, what appeals to them is just detail, like rich detail. Obviously not, the challenge there then is to not overwhelm them with detail, to make sure that you're sequencing it in the right way. Detail and like near real-time updates are what really benefit them. What they don't like is being caught by surprise. They don't want to hear that we've launched something from a customer. They don't want to hear that we've deprecated something from a customer when they have a problem with it. So building that trust from them that like we've got their back when an update comes from us, it's what you need to know. And that's really helped there. One of the keys to success with customer support is having really good onboarding. Unlike other roles, you kind of need to know a lot up front so that you can start adding value, and so you don't feel overwhelmed when you start talking to customers. We have split our customer support roles in two. We have a CSS1 role, Customer Support Specialist 1 and 2, and they take different levels of conversations. So it's not like they need to know everything on day one in the inbox, but they need to know a lot. So having really thorough, engaging, fun onboarding is the key for success over there. And thankfully, we do have that. We get very good feedback on our onboarding. It's heavily through WorkRamp. But that sets them up for success long term then. So that combination of having really good onboarding, helping them to understand the basics of the things they need to know, but more importantly, helping them to understand the information they don't know is most important in onboarding. And then once they come out of onboarding, then once they have access to their knowledge base, which is Guru, once they have their resources in Intercom and external to Intercom, and once they feel supported from their teammates, then they're pretty much like self-enabled at that stage then.
And that's a great topic. Let's double click into onboarding a little bit more. And I'm actually curious how it's evolved. Can you tell us more about the details, like how long they're in there? Is it very product focused? Are there any skills-based training? Just at a somewhat high level, give us the structure of what that onboarding is like and how it's been successful.
This is for customer support?
Yes, for customer support. Yep.
Of course. So it's a 4-week onboarding at the moment, and it covers everything from product, and it's actually mainly products. It's very product heavy. So they'll do a mixture of self-serve learning through WorkRamp, and then they'll go and have a buddy session where they get tested on the information that they've known or that they've kind of gone through, and then there'll be a couple of assessments in there as well to check that knowledge and make sure that they're understanding it correctly. The most valuable or the most impactful part of onboarding for CS is what we call pair inboxing sessions. So they will sit and they will go into the inbox and they'll start taking conversations on a topic, but they'll have their buddies sitting beside them to help guide them, give them advice. So they're the sessions that they find most impactful. So we do a combination of the self-serve learning, of challenges, and then of going into the inbox, but like kind of with your training wheels on, so you're doing so in a fairly safe manner. And then your KPIs, the things you're measured on, they don't kick in until about, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but about 2 months in. So again, you have that safety net of being able to go in there. There's no pressure. You're answering conversations by yourself. You have no time stresses or anything like that on you. And that's kind of how we onboard our CSS people at the moment.
Awesome. Well, let's switch topics a little bit. So you have an awesome foundation on the sales side, awesome foundation on the CS side. And one really cool thing about Intercom is you guys are going global, a huge presence in Europe, multiple offices here in the US. Give us your best tips on how do you run an enablement organization at a global level?
Yeah. Again, there's no secret sauce here. It's a challenging thing just by its nature. It's inherently challenging. The lessons I've learned, though, are, first of all, to treat all your children equally is the way I think about it. So even though I'm based here in Dublin and maybe the majority of our people are in San Francisco, when we're doing things globally, they need to be truly global. So we need to not index for, the people who are sitting in the room. We need to make sure that it works for everyone globally. So that just means doing things at times that suit people, making content more engaging for people who are dialing in VC, trying to avoid VC if you can, maybe doing stuff over video. We've leveraged video a lot recently. It's been very helpful because, again, it's very democratic. And then if things are recorded, just not sharing that recording to people afterwards and saying, hey, this is your recording, go and do it, because people just don't watch that recording that much. So yes, like I said, try to treat everyone equally. Like when it's global, be truly global. So that's one way. Then we leverage tools like WorkRamp and Guru quite a lot. So we'll push content out through those, and then we'll expect everyone to go through those equally. And then if we are running in-person sessions, we'll do them in person in every office. Again, we have the luxury now that we have representatives in most of our offices. So we will we'll run those sessions in each office then as much as we can. The main key for success here, though, is engaging and having a good relationship with your managers, because they're really key to your success. They're basically your foot soldiers here. And when I joined first, we were of a size where I was able to focus on our reps on a kind of a one-to-one basis. I knew everybody. They were enough size that they could sit around a table, and I was able to dial into VCs with them. But then as we grew really rapidly, that broke fairly quickly. And it kind of took me a long time to realize that as well, what was broken there. But again, the key to your success here is you're using your managers. They can relay updates in team meetings. They can be the first line of defense when there's questions. They can help to drive enthusiasm. They're really like the people who will help you to enable on a global scale.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Especially as we see a lot of companies go globally, these are best practices I think everybody could use. So I'll close off with this last question. So every time I visit Intercom and I say, hey, I'm visiting Tom, everyone loves you. They talk about how you work so well cross-functionally. So give us your top tips for working cross-functionally across an org. You've been there for a little while, but what would you suggest to people who say, hey, I'm having a hard time working with marketing or with product or with a support organization? What are your best tips in terms of cross-functional collaboration?
There's two main tips, really. So one is make sure that you're kind of in a give-get relationship. When I kind of was setting up or establishing Enablement here, there was just a lot of things that I had to react to. Like people wanted to roll out things that weren't necessarily sales-driven projects, but needed to happen. So I made sure that like I stepped up and was like a really good partner to them. So then we got into a position where we're in a kind of give-get situation then, where we needed help. We had build and establish that relationship of like, hey, we work together. So that's one thing, is like make sure that like it's a healthy two-way relationship. But the second most important thing is like make sure that people understand the why behind what we're doing. That sounds simple, but it's often very difficult to do and still something we're working on. So for me, we want to be able to explain to people, hey, this is why this is important. And thankfully now there's like a company-wide energy here around going up market, and it's really easy to explain our position in that and when our partners are related to that as well. So helping them to understand the why, but the far most important part of that is closing the loop after the fact. So if we need to work with marketing on something, maybe it's an update to our pitch deck. We need to explain to them, hey, this is why we need this, because we're struggling to explain the value of AnswerBot to this segment of customers, and we think that this infographic might help. So they might go and do that, and then for them that could feel like a black hole unless we turn around and say, hey, we use it on these 5 calls and they progressed and we didn't have to follow up with an email after like we normally do. And then that gives them the satisfaction of knowing, hey, this was good, but it also helps them to understand, okay, this is how it was used. So if we come back the second time, they'll have different suggestions on how to do it. Yeah, so for me, those are the two most important things, was like, first of all, building that trust and that relationship of like, hey, this is a true partnership and we work together on things. And then for the items that we're driving, to be able to turn around and say, thanks for that, this is how we use it, and it was successful, or it wasn't successful, it didn't land at how we thought it would, and here's why, and here's how maybe we can avoid that again in the future. So those two things I think have stood us well here.
Well, that's a great learning. That's why everyone loves you there at Intercom. Well, Tom, this concludes our interview. I really appreciate you sharing these best practices with the sales and CS enablement community. Really happy that you can join us. And thanks for also being a great customer of WorkRamp.
No worries. Happy to do it. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, Tom.